Good evening and welcome to another edition of Fire NNPA and Black Press USA. I am so proud to be your host. We have guests each week talking about a myriad of things. Today, we're going to bring back a person that you may be familiar with. She was actually on the show last month. Her name is Sheila Reynolds, and she is the creator of the Bloom Project. We want to talk and invite her on the show now, and she's going to share with us. She is now has her second book, the Bloom Project, correct?
Yes. Thank you so much, Taylor, for having me back on. I appreciate it.
No problem. So now, if people have no idea what the Bloom Project is about, would you tell them what it's about?
Wow. The Bloom Project centers around celebrating women who have gone through some challenges in their life, but have uh, overcome those obstacles and overcome those challenges and are now blooming. So we're celebrating their evolution because one thing, Taylor, is that most of the time we as women, we don't celebrate ourselves.
Mhm.
We get through things and we go through really difficult things, and then we're on the top and we're doing great things, but we don't stop to celebrate. And so this is an opportunity for women to write their stories and then have an opportunity to really look back and say, wow, I did bloom and I did overcome in my life.
So, what is the response been? You had the first edition, and now you have the second edition. What has the response been? Obviously, good because you're on number two.
Absolutely. It's been phenomenal because five of the 21 authors from Bloom 1 wanted to continue in Bloom 2.
Oh,
And I
that's
think
great.
what's been fantastic is it's been a transformative journey for the women. As they take time, as they reflect on their lives and they look at some of their evolution, writing that awakens something within them to want to continue on their journey and go to the next level.
So, Sheila, what is the process? Because it's not a book written by one person, it's several authors sharing their stories of triumph and pain and resilience. And there's a lot of spiritual sides to it as well. So, what's the process?
Wow. Well, believe it or not, it's a 9-month process. Isn't
Wow.
that interesting? It's a
Yes.
9-month process. Think about that in terms of pregnancy.
Mhm.
And so there is a point in time where we start off, we interview women because not every woman at this point is ready for this particular process. They
Okay.
go through an interview process and we decide on 20 to 30 women to have this opportunity. And then there is coaching. We hire a consultant and a writing coach. And we hired Dr. Emma Fraser Pendleton this time. And I'm not sure if you know Dr. George Fraser, but it's his sister.
Yes.
And so
Okay.
she,
Yeah.
and so, we go through this journey, this process of helping women to really, unearth and birth out that story. And it's often, a challenge for many of the women to go and reflect and examine some of those places that they've left so long ago, but that have made them who they are. And so we take time with them and we coach them, we nurture them, we mentor them through the process. And
I love
then
hearing
when,
that.
pardon me?
I love hearing that. It's not just simply asking the authors to share their story, you're preparing them to be on a platform nationally.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it is a transformative journey, and so we're saying as they bloom and as we bloom, we help other women to do the same. So they're going through this journey. We're all going through this journey as Bloom sisters. But then there are others that will come behind us, and we're there celebrating them and rooting them on as well.
So, can you show us a copy of the Bloom series? I think it's one of them from, yes, look at that.
Absolutely. And it's so beautiful. And a book called Bloom has to be beautiful. And so we have all the women, they select a flower and that best represents them and they tell why that represents their story, in the book. So everyone goes through, that process of selecting a flower, researching that flower, really understanding what that's about. And then we present this book as a bouquet to women
Oh,
around the world.
well, that's beautiful. So, for those who want to either get the first edition or the second edition, how can they get their copy?
Yes, they can get their copy from the individual authors,
Okay.
and or they can also email me at Sheila at wakeupriseupliveup.com, and I will provide avenues for them to get volume 2.
Now, say that one more time slowly for those
I
trying to
know
look for a pen and paper.
that's a long website. Sheila, Sheila, at wakeupriseupliveup.com.
Well, Sheila, I have to thank you. So now I have 3 of your phenomenal authors on standby in the green room. And so I'm going to bring the first one up. I'm really excited about speaking to her. She is Tia Payne, and she's the founder of Legacy 31. Good evening, Tia.
Good evening. How are you guys?
I am excited to have you here joining us today. So, Tia, let's learn a little bit about first what Legacy 31 is all about.
So, Legacy 31 is my nonprofit organization. And through Legacy 31, I do faith based outreach to those who have been victimized by domestic violence or sexual assault.
Wow. And so, Tia, you also you have a faith base to your teaching and working with women in need. Am I correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
How did you find out about the Bloom series and what made you kind of want to submit something?
Well, I was on, what is it called? Clubhouse, yes. I had got into Clubhouse and I ran across this room, and it simply said looking for faith-based women to collaborate on a book. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a woman of faith. Let me join in. And so I joined in, and I just fell in love with Sheila and everything that she was saying. It was amazing. And with me in the process, because I feel like I was at that step of blooming, I just felt like this would be something perfect for me to continue taking those next steps to bloom, to, go to that next level that I was trying to achieve.
And you know what? I want to take a second before I kind of ask you a couple more questions. You actually had a video that you guys share on social media, and it kind of tells a little bit about you and what you're going to talk about. So I'm going to have our producer play that right now.
Hi, my name is Tia, and I am so excited to be an author in the second volume of Bloom, stories for women that will nurture your growth and water your soul. The reason I'm so excited is because I have been in transition, a transition of growth. I mean growth to a phenomenal level just since I began to walk on the destined path that God has for me. So my chapter is called She Survived, and I hope it will inspire you to walk your destined path knowing that what God has promised you is joy and strength in your future, and that anything that He says we can have, we can have. I hope this chapter will give you the strength to know that survival is an option. In any area of your life that you are experiencing adversity or anything like that, you can always survive knowing that God has promised you strength and joy.
Now, Tia, you are the child of a pastor. Your story is just on the surface it's jarring to know not only are you the daughter of a pastor, but you are the daughter of a pastor who was an abuser.
Yes.
Share your story with us. And at what point were you able to either tell somebody or tell the world? That's a really big thing. When you think of a pastor's daughter, everything is good or supposed to be perfect. And I can't imagine that pressure of saying, wait a minute, I have something different to say.
So my parents separated probably when I was about 2 years old. So I didn't really know my father until I was about 9, on a more father-daughter level, when my parents decided to get back together. And my father had been home probably 6 months. before we had that first really big explosion. It was not something we were used to growing up. We had a close knit family, happy, and when he came home, things started to change. And so when I first noticed something just wasn't quite right, you literally felt as if you were walking on eggshells sometimes coming home from school, or if you laughed too loudly, it was very, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And so this one particular day I came home and my father was upset because we had got home a little bit late from school, and he exploded. And he sent me upstairs, and as the rest of my siblings, also my cousin, my mother raised my cousin at that time, as they started trickling in, it got extremely loud. There was yelling. It was a lot of noise. So I ran downstairs to find out what was going on. And as I came downstairs, I seen my cousin at the time fly across the room. And I was so stunned because she hit the wall and she didn't move after that. And so I believe I've always been a protector. And my first thought was, let me go help her. I have to help her. I have to help. And so I ran over there to help, and I was cradling her, calling her name, trying to get her to wake up. And all I heard was rage, is the best way I can describe it. And then there was intense pain because my father ran at me and he punched me in my face.
How old were you?
I was 9. I was 9 when that happened. And so I was stunned. I literally was stunned, like, God, this is not what I prayed for when I asked you to please send my father home. And so even at that, blood dripping down my face, I'm still trying to protect my cousin and cradle her because at that time she still had not come to. Once that happened, then my mom kind of jumped into action. I was, when I say stunned, I was just sitting there cradling my cousin. It was like I was underwater, like, what just happened? What just happened? And I remember my mom screaming my name. And, as I came to, I heard my father yelling. I heard my mom yelling. I heard crying. And I'm kind of rocking with my cousin. And my mother grabbed me. She took me upstairs. And she was trying to clean up my face. And the next thing I knew, my father ran upstairs screaming and yelling and told me, don't ever try to correct what I've done. And at that point, things changed for me. It never went, it was never the same after that. Even at 9, I could tell something, drastic had happened. I was kept out of school for a few days so I could heal up. When I went back, I actually did tell. When I went to school, my favorite teacher, she said, "How are you? Is everything okay?" And I told, and it kind of went kaput, and it never went anywhere from there. I believe she called and made that call to Children's Services. I remember them coming out to the house. I remember everybody saying that did not happen, and we went from there. And I never lost my voice. Every time there was an incident, every time something happened, I called the police. I would call 911. I would tell our teachers at school. But back then, domestic violence back then wasn't one of those things that people came to your rescue, if that makes sense. Yeah. It was something that was hidden in the family. A lot of people didn't talk about it. And so although I never lost my voice, I felt as a child, I didn't have a voice because it was like no one picked up on, my stories that I was telling, seeking help, trying to get help for our family. Literally no one listened. Even the church we were in at the time, people in leadership, no one listened. It was like, he's the pastor. So as the pastor, he was given a pass to do some things that, is definitely has a lot more notice today and is frowned upon a lot more. But in that leadership position, when I was a child, no one helped. No one helped.
And so your mother didn't even have a voice enough to protect you or to stop it?
No, she was scared. Also, she had lived with my dad years before we as his children ever knew him in the home. And, they separated due to domestic violence. We later found out. And so with her still being scared, she protected him, quite a bit. There was times when my mother would, if I went to her and I would say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what dad said to me. It wasn't kept confident. It wasn't kept private. She would actually go tell. And then I would be in trouble for just having normal feelings, scared feelings of, you know, when's the next time something is going to happen? Can we go somewhere safe? It was like I was kind of pushed out in the forefront, to have that rage directed at me. And so it was never ending until, I was old enough to leave home.
Oh my goodness. I think Monica, there was a comment that came in from, I believe her name was Monica, and she said it wasn't viewed as abuse at that time. Monica
I
Abrams
definitely agree.
more.
Yes,
So,
I definitely agree.
so your chapter, what does it specifically deal with?
My chapter specifically deals with outlining how witnessing domestic violence as a child, there's this piece of me that knew that wasn't normal, but at the same time, it was normal. And so I show how witnessing this as a child growing up in such a toxic household and a violent household, that's what my normal became, even though it was like, this can't be normal. And so I grew up and I repeated the cycle. In my first marriage, I married someone just as abusive as my father, someone my father actually, they lived with us for probably about 3 years, probably from the time I was 14 up till I was 17. The person that I married, they lived in our home.
Wait,
And
did they
so,
witness you being abused when they lived in the home?
yes, they did. And so he literally treated me how he seen my father treat me. The
Was he
things that
older?
no, we were pretty much the same age. I think I'm actually probably a month or so. I was about a month older, but we were pretty much the same age. And that's how he treated me, exactly how he seen my father treat me, the names that I was called, just the lack of caring and disrespect. It was like my father taught him those things, and that's what he knew to treat me as his daughter.
So, with this chapter that you have, and would you read the title of your chapter again?
My title is called She Survived.
She Survived. What do
Mhm.
you hope women get from this when they read it?
Empowerment. I really hope someone is empowered. I work with a lot of survivors, and the one question I'm always asked is how do I get past this?
Mm-hmm.
Is there life after domestic violence? And I'm so excited when I can tell somebody, yes, there's normal, healthy relationships after domestic violence. You can heal, you can go on, you can be powerful, you can speak your truth. You do not have to not speak your truth. In March, I started the She Survived movement. And it's
Okay.
a simple shirt. It says She Survived, and it's surrounded by some glittery booms. And it's simply a way for women to tell their story without having to verbalize their story. So often women in, domestic violence situations or who've been sexually assaulted have been told to hush. We don't talk about those things. What happens in the family stays in the family. And so our voices have been, silenced for so many years. And I said, no, no more silence. It's time to tell our stories. It's time to tell our truth. These are our stories. These are the things that we've experienced. And if they're wrong, they're wrong. And someone needs to know, because my story is going to help somebody else feel empowered. My story is going to help someone else survive and know there's resources available. There's people who's going to talk to you, and they're going to embrace you, and they're going to help you on your journey to healing and empowerment.
Now, Tia, you can't be the first person to have this story. So, once you, as an adult, shared your story, started writing about it, did you find that people were responding and saying, "This happened to me too"?
Yes, yes. And
Wow.
so many people were scared to say, hey, this happened to me. Literally, so many people were scared to say, I dealt with this while I was at church. And again, I have a faith-based agency. I have to tell people all the time, I don't speak against the church. What I do speak against is keeping silent about things that happen. It happens at church too. There's a hashtag that I use in quite a few of my posts that I put out. It happens at church too. Multiple people that go to church get abused. Yes, yes. And they're so often silent about it, you would never think so. A pastor's wife, she smiles, she talks to everyone, and she may go home and there's a battlefield at home. That was my story. We went home to a battlefield.
I
And so,
She Carpenter says, "Thank God for your survival. You definitely will inspire others to change their situation." And I just can't imagine being a young child going through that and having your mother there and not
Mhm.
able to, for whatever reason it is, not able to help you, and then be in the church. And I can imagine people coming up to you and talking to you and saying how great your father is, and when all the
Right.
while you realize there's a side of him that you guys don't know. So at any point, did it ever make you question religion in
Mhm.
itself?
It did. That's another question that I'm asked often. Like, how do you
Sure.
maintain your relationship with God if all these things happen? There came a point where I really questioned God. How is this possible? This is a prayer that I prayed. Send him home, and
Mm.
how did he come home like this? And so I blamed myself for years that I brought this onto my family.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
yeah, I thought, my
Wow.
God, you answered my prayer.
Wow.
And so I question, like, God, are you there? Are you hearing me? Is this real? And the older I got, I learned to have my own relationship with God and
Hmm.
stop connecting the dots of the pastor as God, so to speak.
Hmm.
And once I was able to connect those dots and understand that my journey with God, my relationship with God was about me and me alone and no one else. And God chooses to use whom he will. If nothing else, my father taught me to pray. And I continue to pray. I continue to conversate with God. And I know through my journey, there have been some miraculous events through my journey that only the God that I serve could have allowed those things to happen. And so now I give him all the glory. I don't question him. I don't say, why did these awful things happen to me? Now I'm happy to serve him, and I'm happy to use my voice because God did not call us to be abused. I know he didn't. That's not what our life is about. And I'm happy to use my voice and tell that story.
And I think you and the other authors, we have our next author that's going to join us is Vanita Dillingham Anderson. And she actually holds a degree. She's a Bachelor of Science degree in organizational management with an emphasis in change management. And she too talks about, having religion and spirituality. So I want to introduce now Vanita Dillingham Anderson to the show, in addition to our other guests. Hi, Vanita. How are you? I think we have you on mute.
How are you this evening, Taylor?
I'm wonderful. You're joining us actually from Bloomington, Illinois, right?
Yes, I am. The central part of the state of Illinois, 2 hours
Well,
south of Chicago.
we are excited to have you here. But as soon as I read what you have a BS degree in, what is organization management? Oh, no, better off. What is change management? I've
So,
never heard that.
well, change management is how individuals deal with change from a professional perspective. That's what my actual degree is in a
Okay.
professional way. And so when you're dealing with change, we go through changes each and every day. But there are changes especially for women in our lives where we change constantly. We wear many hats, we do different things. And there's some of those changes are hard to do. And some of those changes come about because of things that have happened in our lives. And one of those things is similar to Tia's experience. My change occurred as it pertained to living life after being in the professional world. I'm actually retired, and I've been
Okay.
retired for the last 4 years. And I joined the Bloom Project. I've known Sheila for the past 7 years when she did Wake Up, Rise Up, Live Up. And she called me after volume 2 and said, are you going through some changes now? We know that you've retired, and what are you going through? And we know you want to be an author. And so my story is similar. The title of my story is From Pain to Forgiveness to Purpose. And in every woman's life, there's going to be some type of pain, whether it's through birth, whether it's through disappointments, and whether it's just unexplained expectations that individuals may have. And my journey began many years ago, similar to Tia's, about the same age, at the age of 9. I was born, my mother had me, and for a long time, I thought I was an only child. And I had prayed for a sibling. But then my life changed when I was about 9 or 10. And I knew of my father, but he wasn't with us. And my father married my mother. And at this point now, I have siblings who were from a previous marriage that my father was in. And we became a blended family. And during that time, we looked like the wholesome household. You have a father and a mother in the house. My mother ended up leaving her job and staying home. But what we found out was at the same time, my father was abusive. He was abusive to my mother. He was never abusive to me or my siblings. He was abusive verbally, but he wasn't abusive to her. And so we grew up in the era of what goes on in this house stays in the house. So you don't say anything, you don't do anything. And so for years, you're going through life and you have a facade where you show one face to the public, but then there's this deep down seated pain on the inside that some may know about and some don't know about. So if you see your mother being thrown across a room as a child, and this person is saying, I love you, you know that that's not love. But at the same time, you're wondering, what is it that occurs? So for my entire life, I went through life and I said, I will never get married. No man will ever abuse me to that degree. So you place things in your life where you are hidden and your true self doesn't come about. And you're dealing with all of these changes that occur in your life. You're going through, you're living life. Some people know about it and they don't. But they think they know you and they don't know you. So I retired from the corporate world 4 years ago. And I've always worked with women. I've always been a protector of people. And so to help people deal with change, whether it's from a relationship, I told people, even though I never got married, I've been married, divorced 1, 2, 3 times throughout my friends and watching them grow up through their lives. And then I met a person. And I had no intentions on getting married. And I will be 60 in a couple of months.
You're going to be 60.
I will be 60.
Wow.
60.
Send me your medicine. That is amazing. Okay. I'm going to stay on track. Wow. Okay.
And so I got married 3 days before my 57th birthday.
Well, congratulations, late. Wow. Okay.
And began to bloom. And my husband, he's, I live in Bloomington, and there's a change. But my story deals with generational changes and helping to break generational curses in your families of things that go through, whether it is from domestic violence, whether it's alcoholism, drugs, addictions, and seeing how that impacts one's life and what that does to you. And you start seeing it in a generational perspective. So to help do that and to help break those things, those are the individuals that I work with. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman. I mean, I'm a woman, but you can also have it happen with men. Mm-hmm. And you start seeing what occurs in individuals' lives. And so people are going through, and whether you're in the church or not in the church, it happens. And so to help that occur, it's you have to make a change. And by making that change, you have to make a decision. What's the best thing for me? What's the best thing for my situation? And to have that courage to change. And it is a process and a transformation that you go through for what you do. I'm in the process. I'll be launching my own personal thing, which is Move 'em, which is called Missive of Verity. And so what it means is that you're going to move forward with your truth, whether it's through writing or through stories but to help you understand that you can survive and keep your faith at the same time. And it starts with that personal relationship that an individual has themselves. You don't have to sit up here and say, oh, I'm this, that, and the other. I went to church, but I didn't grow up in the church, if that makes sense.
It does. Now, Vanita, you also work with women who've been released from prison. What type of work do you do with women, and what do you see that they need once they leave prison?
And so what I do with that when working with individuals who are from prison is helping them to understand, because some of the reasons that they are in prison does stem back to what happened to them in their childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And to help them get on that footing to understand that you can overcome. And one of the main things that helped me is something that we hear a lot about, and there's a lot of talk about, is, well, I can forgive you, but I'm not going to forget.
Okay.
And when you get to the point where you are able to truly forgive, your true purpose can come forward. You have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive others. And the most importantly is to get through that and understand that if God can forgive, and he does, he forgets, he throws it away. It's others and yourselves that bring it back up to the surface. And so therefore it helps you to release that information, release it, and like truly forgive. I've had individuals in my family who have been murdered. And I talk about that in my story. And having to forgive someone who has actually killed someone, that is something that you think you never overcome. And as well as forgiving my father for abusing my mother, for what he did and those things, to help individuals get past that point when you feel that I can never forgive them. But what it does is it holds it to yourself, and it holds you hostage, and it holds you bound. And you don't want to stay that way, so that you can become your full self.
Vanita, what's the name of your chapter again? I'm sorry. What's the name of your chapter again?
The name of the chapter is From Pain to Forgiveness to Purpose.
I like that. Now I want to play your video that you guys share promoting your chapter and the book, The Bloom Project #2. So we're going to play it now.
Thank you.
Hello, are you ready to bloom? My name is Venita Dillingham Anderson, and I'm so excited to be an author in the second volume of Bloom, Stories for Women to Nurture Your Growth and Water Your Soul. I'm excited because in a few months, I'll be 60, and I've always wanted to be an author and to inspire others to become their best selves. The title of my story is From Pain to Forgiveness to Purpose, and I hope it will inspire you to release your pain, learn how to forgive, and walk into the God-given purpose that God has for you, no matter your age.
Well said. Well said. I see you moving and looking at yourself doing that. You see difference, but what you have to say, I'm sure it changes lives. And I know this has probably been really exciting. Is this your first time being an author?
It's my first time being an author. It's not my first time being published. I'm a published poet as well.
Okay.
And I enjoy writing. It's cathartic for me. And so it's a way to get it out. And writing, what they say is, writing is very therapeutic. And I believe that God wouldn't given us write the vision and make it plain, because as you can see, the written word goes even beyond what you're doing. They may not be able to see you, but they'll be able to read it and see it for years to come. And we pray that this book, our volume 2, will inspire many other women and men, even though it's written by women, to continue to bloom and understand that no matter where you are in your life, you can bloom and you can change and you can come from pain to forgiveness to your purpose.
So well said. So well said. So we have one more author. There's like 21, I think, in the second issue of this book. Our next guest is Tamika Washington. And I want, before we actually bring her on the screen, we're going to play her video first, and then we're going to talk to her. Here is Takeesha Washington.
My name is Takeesha Washington, and I am so excited to be an author in the second volume of Bloom, Stories for Women to Nurture Your Growth and Water Your Soul. The reason I'm so excited about this project is because I was able to come alongside of some amazing women, and together we are sharing incredible stories of certain hardships that we faced, but also giving valuable insight on what it took for us to overcome those hardships. The title of my chapter is One Last Touch. And by sharing this story, my hope is that I am able to inspire you to move past the pain of certain childhood traumas so that you can continue to fully live out the promises that God has for you.
Now, Takeesha Washington is joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina, but a little birdie told me you're actually from Sumter, South Carolina, which is not too far from Elgin, right? That's where my grandmother and my father's from.
You are absolutely correct. Hi, Taylor. I am so excited that someone even knows where Sumter is.
Yes, I do.
I definitely know where Elgin is. I pass that all the time going home. So hello, neighbor.
Yes, Two Notch Road, Tukadoo Road. Yes. So I got a little country girl inside of me. So
I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I saw that, I'm like, I've never seen that. But, hearing all three of you, Vanita, Takeesha, and Tia, and just talking about childhood trauma, I have been doing I've been in the industry of news, television, radio for, over 15 years now. And I can tell you, I'm always amazed when I hear the number of people that have experienced something traumatic in their life as a child. And some have suppressed it and didn't bring it up until something like this. What does it mean to you to be an author in this Bloom series?
My God, it literally means everything to me to be able to be a part of this. My story, just as you just referenced, my story is one that I didn't shout to the rooftops. No one really knew what happened to me, and I actually suppressed it. I always say that God helped me suppress what happened to me so that I could get through it. And it was, very, very much so like Tia mentioned, how she found Sheila on Clubhouse a few months ago. My experience was the exact same thing. This isn't something that I desired to talk about. This is something that I really made peace with and found a way to move on. But I knew that I wanted to write a book. I actually knew that God had already told me, this is what you need to do. I had no clue what I was supposed to write about. And if I'm being honest, I was really nervous to branch out on my own and do it by myself.
Sure.
So, I always say it was sort of a God wink for me to be scrolling and wasting time on Clubhouse. And here pops this beautiful room with the moderator named Sheila Reynolds, asking for authors, faith-based women. And I kept thinking, well, my goodness, that's me. What is she about? And let me tell you, from one conversation with Sheila, I knew it was an instant God connection. I knew it was something that I was supposed to be a part of. And I knew that this was the avenue where I was supposed to tell my story, finally get it out there, and be done with it. So yeah, I am super excited about partnering with Sheila and especially the other amazing women. I've heard a few of the stories. We got to bond quite a bit throughout this process. We met a lot. And I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of Volume 2. I'll tell you that.
Well, Takeesha, what is your story?
Yeah, so the title of my chapter is One Last Touch. Okay. The reason I titled it One Last Touch is because I begin my story by giving a very descriptive version or recounting of the very last time that I remember my uncle inappropriately touching me. It is something that, if you remember, I say that, I suppressed this for a long time. I can't tell you how long this abuse happened. I can't tell you exactly the details of all of it. What I do remember, what I've always remembered, is this one specific day that just so happened to, fortunately enough for me, because of the dialogue and the way it went down that day, it happened to be the very last day that it happened. So everything, is kind of fragmented still. Even at my age now, it was fragmented, kind of blacked out as a child. There were periods when I did remember some of it. But that is what my story is about. So I start off explaining in a very descriptive way exactly what happened that day, painting the picture. And then I go on to just explain what it took for me. As I was listening to the stories from Vanita and Tia, it's interesting to me. As I listened to them, I liken myself to the baby. I would have been the baby in their story, watching all of this.
Wow.
I had an abusive father as well. However, my father passed away when I was 2. And so my siblings and my mother, they had the one-on-one experience, the firsthand experience and memories of his abuse. I got the secondhand experience of that because I don't remember the abuse of that. So from my vantage point, I experienced what life was like after the abusive father. And where it comes into play with my story is, I remember growing up and experiencing what I experienced and just hiding and feeling just broken. And I kept thinking the entire time, man, would this have been the same if my father was here?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So from my vantage point, that was a big deal for me, and a big part of the reason why I hid what I was going through. And let me tell you, the reason I wanted to write this is really to let people know, yes, this happened to me, but abuse and trauma and pain doesn't look like what we think it's supposed to look like.
So true.
True. Yeah.
I always tell people the boogeyman doesn't look like they show him in the movies. He's the tall, dark, handsome person, the well-liked person, well-groomed person. Yeah.
Yes. And that is exactly what happened to me. I experienced a lot of what I now know to be depression. We didn't talk about that. This was the 80s and 90s. No one really talked about depression in the Black community. No one talked about the need for therapy, but I now know through therapy, and specifically speaking with a Christian therapist, I now know that what I experienced as a child was traumatic, and that I did experience a level of depression that caused me to hide, that caused me to have anxiety. You're talking about my abuser, the man who I spent a lot of time with. You're talking about my story being the one where I was groomed by the person who, by all accounts, I will say, there's certain subjects that I'm really, really good in. When it comes to academics, I never struggled in school because a lot of what I learned from this person who abused me. What I know now is that I was groomed.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I'm going to ask my producer at this point to bring up all of our special guests, Vanita, of course, Tia, to bring them on along with you, Takeesha. And so I have you 3 authors that are taking part, and you're in the 2nd edition of the Bloom Project, which is stories of women to nourish your growth and water your souls. Ladies, are you just really in some way just shocked to have 3 women from from Charlotte, from Illinois, North Carolina, and the last one is from, I didn't get yours, Tia. Where are you from?
Ohio,
to have similar stories? It is just so shocking. And if we have 3 3 women here that could say that. Can you imagine the people in our office who sit next to us at church, who ride the bus with us, who friends? This is just unbelievable. And this is probably why Sheila chose to write this book, Bloom, because she's heard so many stories of women who want to share their stories to help other women get through it.
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What would each of you ladies like to say to a woman out there who was that child when she was 9 years old, but never ever talked about it? Because I think there's something that doctors have said that the body will protect itself by blocking the memory of things to kind of protect the person.
I would just tell them to share their truth. Even now, when I first began to be an advocate, I was actually a child advocate for that very reason, because I was the voice that was never heard. And all of the children that I first worked with, I always told them, share your story, and continue to share your story. Even if someone looks at you and don't believe you, find that one person that will believe you and continue to share your story so your voice can be heard. And whatever is going on, someone's going to hear you, and it's going to come to an end.
And piggybacking on what Tia has said, it's true, is that for most of us, we have grown up, and especially in the Black community, where it was what goes on in this house stays in this house. And it was considered a stigma, or that you weren't being a good child if you told what was going on in your house. And it's time for that to be destroyed, and to let people know that that is not a healthy environment. When we say we come from dysfunctional families, it's because it was allowed to go on for so long, and people chose fear. They were put into a place of fear that if they spoke up, that they were going against it. And now you have to remove that stigma of the things that are actually occurring, so that we can get to a place of healing, wholeness, and faith, and having that belief and trust that it's not good, it's not okay to live in a household or in any type of relationships where you feel that that's the norm and acceptable. And it's a time to not be ashamed, because if it was occurring as a child, you don't know any better, and it hinders your future, and it hinders those around you of what you're doing. We go through these processes and you don't know exactly what to do. So like Tia said, it's to tell somebody.
You know, I think another thing that I had a conversation before with a group, and this was a couple years ago, about when you're in settings and people do the joke about the dirty uncle. And I think people have to be careful about doing those jokes, because as you're saying it, there's now, even listening to you guys, there's a level of reality to it. So you're sitting there saying and joking with it, which actually to some people would make it seem like it's okay if everyone's laughing at the dirty uncle, right?
Right.
Yes.
Wow. Were you trying to say something, Takeesha?
Oh, no, I was just going to chime in. You asked what we may, what we may pass on to someone else. I always encourage women to, let me just preface this by saying this. Healing is a journey, right? Yes. You're not going to heal overnight. Nothing happens overnight. That's why I love the concept of blooming, right? We didn't get to talk about this, but we all picked a flower for our chapters. And the flower that the flower that I picked is actually the water lily, or the sacred lotus. And I picked it because in researching it, what I discovered was the water lily actually goes back down underneath the water every night, submerges itself back into the mud, so it gets dirty every single night. And every time we see the water lily, it is at its peak. It is in full bloom. But what we don't see after we walk away is that water lily goes back into the mud, right? Every single night. So just like us as women, it's okay for us. We will go through things, right? That's almost a given. If you are a woman of faith, you know that you will go through things. But what I would encourage someone is to remember that there are promises given to us in Romans 8:28, right? God works all things together for our good. But there are two principles, right? Do you love him, and are you called according to his purpose? And so as a part of my organization, Coffee and Crowns LLC, what I do is help women, number one, figure out who their identity is in Christ. And then we can begin to put the steps together to live a thriving legacy. So no matter what, that's always my encouragement for women. Remember that all things work together for your good because you love God. Figure out who your identity is.
Your Coffee and Crowns, is that virtual or is it in your city?
It is actually virtual. It actually began in my city, of course, here locally.
Okay.
It began with just conversations with my girlfriends and I. And then I was so busy, I COVID stopped my busy life. And so we took it internationally now. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that is exciting. And how can we follow you for Coffee and Crowns?
Yes, so my website is coffeeandcrownsllc.com. You can actually find me on all social media platforms, Coffee and Crowns LLC.
Now, Tia, I want to ask you, what was your flower?
My flower was called Protea King.
Okay.
And it simply stands for, it has that connotation of courage, of strength, of survival. And so as I'm flipping through flowers, that's what it reminded me of. I was like, oh, I think I can see where this is going with this flower. And that's what spoke to me. Every time I share my story, every time I talk about my story, I always show how strength and courage was the forefront of, my survival, being able to, even talking about it. It took a lot to talk about it. I actually published a book. My first book is called Reflections of a PK, Preacher's Kid.
Yes.
And so I actually talk about, right? Yes. And so I actually talk about growing up in my household with my father as an abuser. Earlier, Sheila had made the reference of it's a 9-month process, like having a baby. That's exactly what getting it out is like. To have the courage to really get out there and speak on something that you don't speak on, let alone speak on it, because my father was a pastor. There were frowns. There were people who didn't want to hear it. There were people who tried to shut me down because I chose to speak on something. But as you can hear through all of our stories, when God gives you vision and God gives you purpose, it comes out. It's going to be birth. I took heart in that. And now I'm over that hump. That was in 2017 when I released that book. And now I'm sharing my story. I have an agency where I'm really getting out there. I do trainings to help people in church understand how to respond to someone's disclosure. I put my story out there, and there's no more shame and embarrassment attached to it at this point.
That does have to be scary, because not only are you telling about something that happened to you, you're saying the person wasn't a stranger. Right. So it still has to do with you. And if I haven't said that during this program, I commend you ladies for being courageous, because when you put yourself out, it's different now. We have social media. People can say things and hide behind a name. You don't know who they are. They can say malicious things. Of course, they can say nice and supportive things, but to put yourself out like that, because that means your employer and the people you work with and your friends now know something personal about you that they didn't know before. And you're courageous, and you should be commended for that. Vanita, I didn't ask you, what was your flower?
My flower was a white tulip.
Oh, okay.
And tulips and lilies are my favorite. And I chose it because after researching it even more, I've always loved the calla lilies. White is for purity. And we've all gone through something that has gotten us dirty, that we don't feel the best. But a tulip continues to grow, and forgiveness is from that. So when you're going through things and you need that purity and to be forgiven, a white tulip or a white lily is a beautiful thing. And a lily also can give you that peace that you need to have. And that's that, not only the peace within yourself, but the peace with those that may have abused you or didn't treat you so well. And I chose it because flowers always continue to bloom.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you do, you can try to crush it and ball it up, but it keeps coming back. And as we continue to bloom, we will all be blooming women in this world today and to help others.
I just love hearing you guys. I know this is going to be exciting to read the book. And now we can actually get a copy of the book from any of you guys. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's start with Takeesha. How can we get a copy from you?
You can actually go directly to my website, Coffee and Crowns LLC. There is a link on the front page that will redirect you to where you can order from my website.
Venita?
And you can order from my page, MOVM, the year 2007.org.
And Tia?
You can order for me from legacy31.org.
Ladies, I cannot thank you enough. I was really excited when I met Sheila Reynolds and we talked about the first edition. Oh, Sheila, she's there. Okay. You hung tight. Thank you, Sheila. Sheila, this is so exciting to have these women here. These are just some. I think you said there's 31 authors in the second edition of the Bloom Project. I think we have you on mute.
Yeah, there's 21 authors.
21, okay.
Yes.
21 authors.
Say, I'm so proud of them, Taylor. I just so honor, their courage, their transparency, and their willingness to share their stories to really help other women to bloom and to get to the other side and let them know it's okay. Life happens and we are gifted and anointed to overcome. So I just honor you all.
Sheila, when is the second edition available?
That's wonderful. It is on its way, and we're having a book launch in celebration. It's going to be Saturday, October 23rd. So mark your calendar. Somebody put that in the feed. And you'll be hearing more about it, but they will register at bloomvolume2.com. Bloom volume, and it's the number 2.com. And so we'll be getting that information out here shortly. And we look forward to people joining us. And each author will have their own area where their friends and family can come and celebrate them. We'll have their writing coach, Dr. Emma Fraser Pendleton, who's just a fireball.
Yes, she is.
We'll have their mentor and coach, Audrey DeBarras, and myself. We're there to celebrate them, and it's going to be a great time.
Great. Well, congratulations again, Vanita, Dillingham Anderson, Takeesha Washington, Tia Payne, and of course the creator Sheila Reynolds for really putting the Bloom Project 2 out. We look forward to supporting you and encouraging women to go from pain to celebration and growth. And I'm just really honored to have you ladies on the program with me here tonight.
And
Thank you.
Thank you so much
for inviting us and sharing your platform.
No
we
problem.
Appreciate you.
We love it. You were referred to us and it's just spiraled from there. So listen, if you have a show idea or a guest that you'd like to have on Black Press USA and NNPA's FIRE program, simply email me at taylorthomasanchor@gmail.com. That's taylorthomasanchor@gmail.com. And next week, just to let you know, we have the creator of DC's Hip Hop Museum that will be here, and also Grand Master G of the legendary Sugar Hill Gang. They're going to be joining us next week.
Wow.
Until next week, everyone, God bless and goodbye.
Bye.